Hey guys, this is Hell Hades. This is a raid Shadow Legends video. Guys, I had a really interesting day yesterday. So I got to meet with some of the senior management team at Plarium. It's actually the first time I've had a meeting of this scale since I've been a content creator. Yeah, in fact, it was due to happen this time last year, but with everything that was going on in Ukraine, it basically didn't happen. But me, a number of other content creators, and a few of the Plarium senior team, we met really to have a discussion. And we got to ask questions. We got to try and understand some of their thinking around some actions. And really what I want to do in this video is talk through what that conversation went like. I can't share like the full detail of what's next and all that type of stuff. But what I can do is give an overall impression of the way they're kind of like looking at things. Some of the things, the topics that we brought up as content creators, some of the things I think landed and some of the things I think did not land in terms of our feedback. So a bit of an open discussion about it. And yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy it. So firstly, every time I've met with anybody from Raid, and over the last 4 years, I've met with a number of people in senior positions. I've met with people which like run the community. There's a whole bunch. Yeah, I've met with developers. I've met with the person who was responsible for a lot of the Call of the Arbiter stuff. They're all super passionate about this company and about this game. Yeah, and I know probably now there'll be comments like, oh, shilling for Raid. It's not like that. I'm just a person and I speak to people and you get that coming across. Like they're super passionate. They're also probably a bit protective, honestly. Maybe you would say defensive because they're really passionate about the work that they've done. Yeah, Raid has been a phenomenally successful game. Whether you like it right now today or not, can't argue that it's been phenomenally successful and basically has been the top of this genre for the last number of years. Okay, so good job is what you have to say to that, right? For all you don't like, the game has got a backbone, which is great. And that came across really well in the conversation. Now, there's a number of things where we're kind of like calling it out, saying, you know, how did you end up in this direction? And, you know, when you're talking to some of the senior team, the initial view is always, we think we're building something really cool. Yeah, so when we speak about things like the Tag Team Arena and Live Arena, they're building these game modes thinking they're going to be hits. Yeah, that's literally it. They think it's going to be a smash hit, and sometimes they're falling short. They're falling short with how they think the player base will react, but also I think from my perspective, they've fallen short with actually then enhancing it when it doesn't land. And so, you know, some of my feedback on Arena was firstly, you've got some champions which are pretty broken. Yeah, and there's this fear of changing champions which are broken because of what's happened in the past. Yeah, so, you know, when you've got champions which have come out and honestly, you know, Mariska and Taras in particular are just so embedded in the meta, quite difficult to then go in and just nerf those because, you know, your Krakens and Whales have spent a ton of money to get them. So, you know, the view is we don't nerf champions, certainly not Void legendaries or legendaries. We try and bring other champions in the game to counter them, or we try and bring, you know, different ways to counter them in the game through like artifact sets and stuff. I'll come back to like champion nerfing and stuff in a second, but there was also this kind of like feeling of, or sorry, my feedback to them was one of the reasons why I think these game modes are not well received, I guess, is like, what do you win? Really, like for PvP, I would want to have something decent to strive for. Yeah, if I'm in like the top however many players of Plat, currently the rewards, honestly, my feedback was I just think they suck. Yeah, the gear sets are now dated. They don't work in current meta. Yeah, okay, there's some quartz available and there's shards available, but this is like a once a week thing. And you have to do really well to get into this sort of realm of play. And when you then just drop down one tier to gold 5, the rewards are literally shocking. There shouldn't be any 5-star gear in here, all that type of stuff. And that's my feedback. Yeah, it's just kind of like you're not really incentivizing people to do these game modes. When you talk 3v3, I mean, it's even worse, honestly. You get like the Bazaar shop, fine. And, you know, some of the stuff in here is worth picking up. But it's, you know, what's the difference between me being someone who just sits on the edge of gold 4 or gold 1 even, and the dude that literally is in first place, who try hards every single fight? All I literally do is I look down there and I'm like, are there any freebie wins? Yes or no? If there's not, okay, well, I've got to do 5 today. Battle anyone. Battle anyone. Do my 5 fights. If I win, great. If I don't, whatever. You know, that's the way I play this game mode, because I find it dull and I've got no incentive to be better. So my feedback was, it feels like that's something that's missing. I'd say that's one of the things that probably didn't really land. I think they don't really have immediately any thoughts to change that. Live Arena, I think they hoped would be huge, and I think it's gonna kind of been a bit of a flop, unless you're someone who is massively into it. And I'll be honest, like when I played it, I really enjoyed it, but because I do not have time to just be on this every day, strangely, you think I would be, but I don't. I record videos for you guys. I'm not on it all the time when these arena sessions are open. And my rank degrades to the point where I'm just like, well, I can't really be asked to try and make sure that it doesn't degrade. I'm degrading too fast. So I feel like this is a problem. Anyway, it doesn't feel like there's any immediate changes to the champions which are overpowered or to the rewards that you get. Okay, that's the feeling I got. And there was an example, actually. They said, look, when they nerfed Sifi and Rotus a few years back in like 2020, there was this big community uproar because it's like, you know, that shouldn't happen to big champions. You should just buff champions to their level rather than nerfing the big ones. And I actually put out a video around the same sort of time saying Trunda is broken and she should be nerfed. And I actually said during the meeting, the reaction to that video, and I got like hard flamed in comments for that video, the reaction to that video is one of the reasons why they don't like to nerf any champion. Because there was just like absolute community uproar about my proposed change. And the change was actually due to fix the champion. They said they literally had a fix ready to go, like coded, ready to drop, and they didn't drop it because of the reaction to that video, which is interesting. So obviously they do kind of like keep a pulse around what's going on. So yeah, so they're kind of changes that they want to do in Arena are actually more about the amount of time that it's taken in Arena. Some of the reasons why they've brought in like the supersonic set from the Cursed City is because they want to get back to or closer to the option of having a speed meta and not just a tank meta in Arena. Now, again, you know, as a group there that play this game pretty heavily, there's some fundamental flaws for them to be able to do it now. Like reaction gear is very difficult to therefore play in a speed meta, because how do you deal with it? Can't deal with it. Anyone who's wearing reaction gear doesn't take any damage. Stone skin gear, people wearing stone skin gear can't die. So like there's these kind of meta sets that are really stopping the game having any sort of fast flow. And if you're not going quick, you need tons of tanky people to stay alive, and therefore you have this slow meta. So it's something that's on their mind. It's something they want to change. We spoke about, I specifically brought up blessings. So a number of things on blessings. Firstly, I brought up the fact that the wish list is basically a crap list. For the average player that doesn't have most champions in the game, you never get anyone off your wish list, and therefore it's almost pointless to go and farm these souls. Even though blessings are actually really impactful for your account, it's pointless to go out and farm souls. Okay, so they took that on board. They actually said there's going to be a pretty big rework generally of soul stones and blessings and stuff like that next year, within the first half of the year, but we don't know exactly when. So I'm hoping they do something with the wish list, making it way more impactful to pick someone up. Like it should be something more like, I don't know, if you have on your 5th legendary soul, you definitely get someone from your wish list. Something like that. That's how different it should be, in my opinion. Also, when I spoke about the blessings, I said, look, trouble you've got is blessings. You don't really have blessings for a tank class, a healer class, a debuffer class. Okay. And again, I don't know if this really landed or not, because the reaction was, well, I don't know that we want people to be tankier in PvP. And I'm like, forget PvP. The majority of your player base enjoy PvE content. So we definitely should have blessings which makes some more sense for those different classes that you've got in your game. You know, the people tanking stuff up, people that are healers, people that are debuffers, they need blessings, which makes some sense for them. So, I mean, hopefully that's kind of like come through. And they did mention, you know, we've got a whole new set which are not yet launched, which they might do something with that. So I think that kind of like landed a bit. But the other thing which was spoken about briefly, and yeah, Scratch kind of brought this up. You know, Polymorph kind of broken a whole bunch of champions in the game. They're aware that this is broken. They are definitely going to fix this. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but they want to change it. And yeah, so there's definitely going to be some changes coming to this system, and hopefully how obtainable they are for champions. They did also mention and acknowledge that some of their content drops, like Sand Devils, Phantom's Grove, and the Iron Twins, the boss mechanics are not great for the average player. And, you know, the fact that people are having to try and build unkillable teams to get it done, you know, and get it done with any pace, they acknowledge that's not good for the game. So they didn't land this. What I would hope is when they do acknowledge this, like, can't they change it up? And maybe it takes a lot of work to change it up, but they definitely acknowledge it. They acknowledge that these content drops in particular are not strong for, you know, in terms of stuff that they've done. They're really proud of the Cursed City, and they're loving the feedback we've had so far. And I think as content creators, we've said, look, we think this is good content. Yeah, I do. Hopefully you guys do as well. I mean, and they've realized that content drops need to be big now. Yeah, they need to hold people for time. Doom Tower is something they're very proud of. The Cursed City they see on a similar kind of realm to Doom Tower. You know, a proper juicy bit of content with a big boss and a lot of stuff to do. And they've said they've already got basically plans for the next 2 big content drops. They didn't tell us what they are, but it seems to me like they've got this cycle of July and December as the big dates for drops. And they work a good 6 to 12 months in advance. So any of this stuff that's happening now, they've been working on for a long time. Now, I pushed quite hard on quality of life, and it was acknowledged that there needs to be some work done, but there's only so many things they can work on at one time. And I pushed back quite hard on this, and I said, you know, there's some stuff which I think's what I called low-hanging fruit. Yeah, things like the marketplace, low-hanging fruit to improve. Things like the tavern, quality of life, low-hanging fruit. Things like the token trader, low-hanging fruit. Yeah, I don't think that landed, and I hope that once they get a chance to kind of almost like, you know, think over the meeting a bit more, maybe watch some of these reaction videos or these kind of like secondary videos, that they do understand that these would be big changes. These would be big changes and very low cost for them to do. So when I talked about things like the token trader, you know, having 6 epics in here as well, and get tokens for epics that you redeem, not to the same level of legendaries, but a decent amount, rotates once a month. All of that, I'm sure, would take an intern a couple of days in terms of code, because everything's there. I reckon if I lent them Saf for a day, he would get it done in a day. Like, that's where I think it's at. But I might be wrong. I'm not a coder myself, right? So I could be being naive there. But this, we said quite strongly, this is low-hanging fruit, and it would take very little effort to at least change the legendaries here. Have a lock function. You know, maybe it changes once a week, but you can lock one if it's definitely someone you want and you're working towards. Have 6 epics as well as 6 legendaries. Be able to redeem points for your epics. Or, you know, reduce the cost slightly or increase the value of legendaries that you turn in. Because at the moment, it's a lost system. And the marketplace should just absolutely level as you level. Yeah, we should see, once you're past level 50, for example, maybe instead of just getting the 5 ancients, there might be a void shard that comes in here once a month. Instead of always being uncommon and common heroes, you should see rares in here. Instead of it being 5-star shit gear, you should see 6-star gear that you actually care about. Maybe with the chance to get a mythical piece now and then as a very low chance. Yeah, give people a reason to want to come back in here. I've got to say, Watcher of Realms do it, and they do it really well. Yeah, I play Watcher of Realms. I'm going to reference actually Watcher of Realms for my next thing. They are absolutely on board with wanting events to be more interesting. But my my perception of what they said in the meeting is actually they don't quite get it. Apologies if you're watching this and you disagree, by the way, the senior Plarium team, okay? I'm just being honest here. They really think that the tournament event is a hit, and I think actually it kind of is. It gives you a different way of getting a champion, a past fusion, a very strong champion if you want to. It means that you're not just doing the fusion stuff, you're actually doing a different kind of method, but it's still kind of doing the same thing, right? We're still in there. We've got the different milestone rewards. You know, you're being pushed to do Dungeon Divers, Dragon 20. You know, it's different versions of the same is what I would say, okay? Now, you're going to hate me for this because anyone who doesn't play this game is going to be like, oh, you're trying to get us to play this other game. I don't care if you play this other game or not, right? I enjoy this other game called Watcher of Realms, but it's not just Watcher of Realms. Tons of games are doing this type of stuff now, yeah? Newer games, they've got a fresh view of events. Let me show you this. It's, in my opinion, quite simple, okay? We've got, for Christmas, this Frostfall Jamboree, we've got an event where they put in a boss. It's called a boss rush, okay? This boss is a legendary champion in the game, but they've changed the skin for this event. All they've done is they've made it kind of have this kind of like shadowy effect. So it feels like we're fighting something different. They've made it big. And all I've got to try and do is burn as much damage as I can in a time limit, whilst I'm taking more damage over time, more damage over time. It's very simple, in my opinion, to implement. And it feels fresh. It's not something I've ever done in this game before. Now, look, the mechanics are all mechanics that I've done in the game. It's using a set of heroes, whatever. It's actually bloody easy to implement, right? Really easy. But it feels fresh as an event. I'm not just going and farming a dungeon that already exists. I get rewards which are specific to this event, etc. So this is the type of thing that I was talking to the team about. And, you know, when we were actually spitballing this idea, he was like, well, imagine we could put Duchess as a big boss. We could do it as an event boss. But, and this is where experiences that are going on right now pave the path of either doing something or not. They feel like the double boss, the new double boss thing in the city of Sintranos is not well received, okay? So city of Sintranos, where we've got these double bosses, there's a lot of, I'd say misinformed people, honestly. That's my view. But anyway, people are saying, look, double bosses, you're just using the same assets again and again. It's lazy, it's cheap. And therefore, they're fearful to do an event like I've just shown you. Imagine if you're fighting a Duchess as a big version, different version, slightly different kits, and you've got to bring in a certain type of team. It's a fresh event. You can win rewards, etc. Are you not up for that? Let me know down below. Are you up for that? Or would you rather do kill Dragon 20 a billion times, kill this a billion times? What would you rather do? Because right now, they think you'd rather do the Dragon 20 thing. And I can't believe that's right. I cannot believe you'd rather do that than to make something out of assets they already own, which feels fresh as an event. So we talked about it for a bit. They're nervous to do stuff like that because they think it will be poorly received. Whereas, my view, that would be way more interesting. Yeah, so this is one example of what Watchers have done. And then the second event here, they called it, again, Boss Rush. They've released in 3 different bosses. These are all characters from the game. Yeah. And in this one, I'm bringing melee champions. Yeah, so it's 2 different events, all using assets already in the game. And you basically, you're up against everybody. So, you know, I'm trying to get my best score because I want to beat everybody else. I want to be in the top 10% of people that play this mode. That's one thing. And then the second thing is I get to earn a load of rewards, which I like. So double whammy. And I'm like, and it's fair, it's fresh. I do it every day. Only takes a few minutes of my day. And from a kind of like build perspective from the game, super cheap to do, super easy to do. It's using all assets they already own. This dude's not really doing anything. He's just standing there looking proud. But, you know, every time I've done it, it's felt fun. I've done videos on it. It's felt fresh. And yeah, I think it's a way better way of doing events in this style of game. So firstly, they are listening. They don't necessarily agree, but at least the conversation is open. And hopefully they'll watch this back and they'll kind of get a different vibe from some of the comments. They do read the comments. Yeah, so I just have to say, like, they're aware of a lot of our frustrations. They're aware of it. It's just not as quick to change some of it as we want it to be, especially when they're trying to work on some of the big content drops like the Cursed City. They know about time in game. Now, we brought this up quite a lot. They know about time in game. They're bringing super raids basically everywhere. We spoke about the potential of, just being able to kill something for a day and then auto the rest of the keys. And felt like they weren't against that. Initially, they said, look, we want you still to have to build your teams. Otherwise, what's the point? It just becomes an auto farm game. And I said, look, what about if we still have to beat it today with our team, but then I can just auto the rest of my keys? I don't want to watch it for the next 10 runs. Just auto it in one hit. And again, they didn't seem like they were against that. It's a coding thing. They said, look, it's probably not going to happen in the next 5 minutes, but it's definitely something that they might consider. Another time sink is this 3v3 arena. If you do all your keys, 20 fights, especially at the high end, each fight's about 5 minutes. If I'm actually playing this properly, each fight's about 5 minutes. Yeah, that's basically, it's hours of my day. I can't do it. I would suggest you halve the amount of tokens that you can use, double the reward. That's what I would suggest. I think it just makes sense to give people some time back. But they're aware of the challenge around time. They're aware of it. And I'm not saying they've got suggestions or solutions for all of it right now, but they're definitely working towards some of that stuff. They're aware that their tavern is grossly, honestly, just out of date compared to what other games are doing. Yeah, auto upgrade features, stuff like that. They know they need these things in the game. But again, it's about where they spend their time, where they spend their priorities. I would suggest there is a priority now for some quality of life stuff pretty quick. I think that would be the best next couple of patches would be a whole bunch of quality of life changes in the areas that I'm talking about. And I think the other thing which kind of like came through was, they definitely want to build ways in the game to get some of these champions which are now dated up to scratch. Yeah, so they said they want to go back to doing one or two, a couple per month where they buff basically legendaries which have fallen out of the meta or just don't work well in any content. They're just old school now. They want to make sure that they bring some of those up to date every month, as well as, they're going to continue bringing out champions which should transform the meta a bit. Now, as I said earlier, they are worried about nerfs. Probably, and again, because of comments, I would argue Taurus needs a small nerf. Doesn't need to be a big nerf. I would argue he needs a small nerf. This passive here is absolutely broken. Reduces damage from all skills by 50%. It's nuts. This part of his passive is also pretty damn broken. Like, he does so much damage. There's too many things that he does which are broken. Marishka, she's busted. Her heal is nuts. Like, if you want, and this is the balance, right? You either do a small nerf to those two, or you need to buff about 100 legendaries. That's it. What do you want? Which would you rather have of those two things? I just feel like those two champions in particular could do with a small nerf. Ultimate Death Knight could do with a small nerf to his passive. Maybe his passive has got a 1-turn cooldown on it, for example. So you don't have him running at 102 speed and basically slowing all of the arena fights down so much. Things like that, I think, that's the angle I'd rather have. But they're very, very afraid to do that. Yeah, it came through loud and clear. That's not going to be the approach because the community gets so irate about nerfs. Now, there's a couple of nerfs which were called out. The Cadaver nerf, yeah, spoke about it. The Madman nerf. And they said, look, we can't have rares which are breaking the game. Legendaries which are top tier, like we see with the Trunda Yumiko thing going on with Hydra Clash right now. You've got teams like this one here. At the highest level, they're doing like an insane amount more damage than anyone else. Yeah. So, but they're nervous to do any of those nerfs. They basically said, look, if we nerf Trunda now, it's the only thing she's actually in the meta for right now. She's fallen out of the meta for Arena. So if we nerfed her for this as well, is it the right thing to do? I get where they're coming from. I do. I get where they're coming from. They don't want to upset everyone. And, you know, surely a solution would be that Yumiko shouldn't reset herself. But again, it's a Void Legendary. They don't want to nerf it because they don't want to piss everyone off. So they're very afraid to do nerfs to these overpowered champions. They'd rather buff or bring in new. I'd say bringing in new's not the solution because, like, I mean, it's just so hard to get these unique legendaries. Unless you bring them in through, you know, the login reward type champions like the Wukong. And in fairness, they've done that a fair amount. Ultima Death Knight, Wukong, like they brought them in as freebies for people. But yeah, it's very difficult for people to compete in any sort of meta when you're needing these like unique Void Legendaries and you need multiple versions of them. Like it makes it less and less achievable to play the game at a high level. So anyway, look, I just want to say, look, firstly, I actually really appreciate that they reached out to us as a group of content creators and had this open discussion. I don't think that discussion suddenly means they're going to start taking on board all of our ideas, right? I'm not that naive. And in fact, I'm hoping that they continue to have this open forum, even if it was like once every 3 months, where we got a chance to voice concerns, voice suggestions, and hear some of their thoughts about what's coming. Because I think it's healthy. And I also think we'll start to build a bit more confidence that some of the ideas we're bringing are actually, you know, qualified. It's not like, you know, I'm a guy behind a camera. I'm not a game developer and all that sort of stuff. So I get right now that they've got kind of like, well, why would we listen to you versus these people that we pay a lot of money that are specialists in this job? And that's fair, by the way. That's a fair thing. But I'm probably more immersed in this game and I get more of a kind of sense of what people want probably than some of their development team, right? Because it's also my life. Yeah, it's also my life. So I'm hoping that over time we build that trust, we keep the communication going, and we start to see some of these things change. And hopefully they start to open their eyes to some of our ideas. But at least the conversation has started. So thanks to PlayerIn for that. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you do give balanced feedback down below. They read it. Anyway, up in Hell Hades. I'll see you soon.